very excited to talk a little bit about how we're a managed service provider here in town. It means we work with small and mid-sized companies with all of their IT needs. And we sort of do three things at Imagine IT. We do IT support, just regular IT support. When your computer breaks, we come running and fix it. We do a lot of cybersecurity. I know before this presentation started today, I had a great conversation about cybersecurity and the importance of cybersecurity. And the other thing that we do is digital transformation. You guys have probably heard of digital transformation. It's kind of the big buzzword right now in technology. And we have. That's Frank. This is Frank's screen? Yeah. Okay, cool. So digital transformation is one of those buzzwords. It's a little bit like the cloud was 10 years ago. It's like everybody's talking about digital transformation, and you talk to one person, it means one thing. You talk to somebody else, and it means completely different. And so here at Imagine IT, we've taken the whole concept of digital transformation, and we've tried to define it and have it make some sense. And Office 365 is sort of in the background of most of the digital transformation stuff that we're doing. So let me give you an example of what I mean by sort of what we call business transformation versus what most people will just call digital transformation. We had a client, COVID kicks in. This client does consulting with grieving families and people that are grieving loss. And they had clinicians all over the Twin Cities, and COVID hits and they can no longer meet people face to face, right? Which same thing that happened with a lot of businesses across the Twin Cities. So they went out and purchased a platform that was charging $5,000 a month for them to be able to provide telehealth solutions for all of their customers. And it was working great for them. And we had a conversation with them and said, you know, just curious, but why are you spending $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year on this solution when you guys have Microsoft Teams? Are you aware that we could fairly easily convert Microsoft Teams into a fully HIPAA compliant telemedicine solution? And they're like, no, we had no idea that that was a possibility. So we had a conversation with them. The cost for them to do that was about $30,000. And so the ROI, the return on their investment, the return on that $30,000 was 6 months. Very easy to see that this was going to be a wise decision for this clinic to do, right? In addition to that, they would now be using Teams, which was part of the rest of their Office 365 environment. So they had great connectivity into their email and into chat and into all these different things that they had, instead of having this other program that's sort of set off to the side, where people had to come in the morning and log into their Teams and email environment. And then they had to go over here and log into this other environment and kind of conduct business all day while checking the screen over here on the other side all day long. It was just kind of a mess. So we were able to bring all that together, and this is our definition of what we would consider business transformation. When we can show a return on that investment in addition to using the tools that they already had. And so we sort of want to dive into this whole idea of Office 365. Well, before we get going, I want to introduce, we have some partners who we work with and do a lot of our Office 365 development and consulting. And it's a company in town here called Perceptive. And what we've done is we've created a live SharePoint site that we want to share with you guys today. I had considered going through and doing screenshots of a SharePoint site and going and pounding through a PowerPoint presentation. And we just decided, why would we not just build a live SharePoint site and let everybody here today see what a modern SharePoint site should really look like? I know I talked to a few of you. Who in here right now is using Office 365? Okay, that's awesome. And if I were to ask you, what is Office 365? How would you define Office 365? Just curious.
A cloud-based office program, basically.
Okay. And when you say office program, what do you mean by that?
The ability to do just about anything and everything when it comes to what you need on your computer. So the equivalent of Excel, PowerPoint, Word, but you also have the ability to share that with your team and be able to update it in real time versus having to send documents back and forth.
Awesome, great. So some collaboration in addition to the kind of the Office apps. It's amazing when I'm out talking to business owners, how many times I say to people, do you guys use Office 365? I'm like, yeah, we're all in on Office 365. And I say, what do you mean by that? And they say, well, we use Word and we use Excel and we use PowerPoint and they're using the apps, which has been part of Office for a million years, right? But Office 365 is this huge application, all these different wonderful applications that are in the cloud. It's not just Word and Excel and PowerPoint. Okay, so another question for the group, how many people use SharePoint? Okay, so few people in the room use SharePoint. And again, I get sort of a similar thing, and we'll show you sort of what SharePoint is supposed to look like. Okay, but most people view SharePoint right now as sort of my files are in the cloud, and I can share those files with other people and I can collaborate. But what most companies have done is they've taken their old server environment, right, where we used to have nested folders, and I used to have all these different folders, and within those folders I had folders, and within those folders I had folders, and within those folders I had folders, and everybody in my company had a folder structure like that, right? And that was our old server. And what most people have done with SharePoint is they've taken the folder structure that they had that was on the ground on a server, and they've just copied that and moved that up to the cloud, which has some advantages. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do, but there's so much more to SharePoint than just that. Yeah.
Is there a difference between SharePoint and OneDrive?
Absolutely. So I'll just address that right now, just real quick. So SharePoint is really, if you think about SharePoint, SharePoint is a place, a repository for those files where you want everybody else to have access for those things. So in the server days, we used to have access to all the files on the SharePoint, and then each individual user might have a U drive, and that U drive was where I kept the stuff that I was going to use. And other people couldn't view the stuff in my U drive. And that's really what Microsoft sort of developed OneDrive for. OneDrive is sort of, if you think about OneDrive are for the files that I have that only I need access to. Nobody else in my environment is going to need access to them. Okay. Anything, if I want to share things with Colin or Kelly or Lisa, I want to put those things into SharePoint because that will allow everybody else to have access to those. Okay. The other cool thing about OneDrive is, and you guys might know this, but OneDrive will sync locally with your machine. So if I have a laptop and I'm going to go on a business trip, I don't have to, the night before my business trip, throw everything on a thumb drive. So I'm going to have the critical files with me. All I have to do is make sure that they're in my OneDrive, and then those are synced locally to my laptop in real time. So all I need to do when I get ready to go on a trip is close my laptop and I'm ready to go. Okay, really good question. Yeah.
So if you have a SharePoint, is there any need to have a server?
No. Well, I take it back. In some cases there is, right? There's still, we were up at a manufacturing facility a couple of weeks ago, and they have legacy manufacturing equipment that was built in the 60s. And each piece of equipment is $500,000, and they're not ready to replace them anytime soon. And that legacy equipment won't run on any of the newer operating systems. So they have to have a server there on premise with that old operating system just to keep that equipment running. But in general, and we'll go into this a little bit in just a second, in general, you don't need that anymore. Everything that a server used to do as far as authentication, security, safe login, all of that stuff now happens in the cloud environment. Okay. So Frank, why don't you take over here for a second? Actually, just let me introduce Frank. Frank Carlson is from Perceptive. This is the company that we used to do a lot of the SharePoint and the specific design things that we need to have happen. These guys have been doing SharePoint and SharePoint development for a long time. We also have Jurjesh with us, who's part of this program also. And together they've sort of put together this live SharePoint site for us. So Frank, why don't you take off here and just kind of show us what we're looking at.
You got it. Thanks, Mark. Happy to be with you all. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm Frank Carlson, as Mark said, with Perceptive. And today, we've built out, Mark has asked us to build out kind of this vision of what does it look like for employees to use what Microsoft is calling the modern workplace. Okay, so that's the term that they've coined, modern workplace. And they've brought kind of the whole 365 environment together. And they're trying to continue to consolidate things. And that's why you see overlap But essentially, I just want to introduce a couple of things to you. Maybe you've seen them already, but just haven't kind of put the puzzle pieces together. One of the things that, and I'm going to start out with kind of the day in the life of an end user. So somebody comes to the office, they boot up their computer, they log on. What do they see? What do they do? How do they get acclimated to their day? What tasks do they need to do? And also not only their own tasks, but how do they spend a few minutes plugging into the organization, especially in this time of hybrid work environments? How do you stay connected with your employees? And that's really what Microsoft has turned attention to in something they call Microsoft Viva. You can just explore that Viva. There's several different modules that are part of it, but I don't know about you, but for myself, all of a sudden I started getting these Microsoft Viva emails, right? And you're like, well, what are these things about? Well, Viva is about employee experience and making sure that trying to help employees be connected and help with their experience. So I thought I'd start out there with kind of this email that comes to us in the morning. We take a look at that. We'll move over into Microsoft Teams that many have implemented already. And there's a feature of Teams. Some people think it's equivalent to Teams, but it's called Planner. And that can track your tasks. So I'm going to move from Viva to Teams with my tasks and kind of dial those in for my day, right? So here's what I'm working on. Here's some of my tasks. Okay, here's where this fits in. Here's my reminders. And then we'll move over to, and you'll see how Microsoft allows us to integrate with the intranet site. And that's where I can plug in as an employee and take a look at, I can take a look. Yes.
Let me interrupt you for a second. We're still back on the Viva slide. Could you
Yep.
refresh or something? I'm assuming you on the planner.
Well, I was just talking about moving there, but then we'll go there. So
got it.
I was just kind of setting that up, what we're going to do, this scenario. Sorry about that. Without the PowerPoint slide to walk you through, it's kind of like I'm just setting it up.
Yeah.
So, so yes, I am in Viva here. We'll move to the planner and the tasks with the intranet site, and then I'll hand it over to Gurjesh, who's kind of built out that site, and he can walk you through some of the, some of the additional features or some of the things we built into the site itself. So I've just kind of given you the walkthrough and as an employee comes in the morning. So I've got a few of these that I've stacked up from the last couple of days. Let's assume this was Friday morning of last week, and basically this briefing comes to me in the morning. It says, hey, take a look at next week, which is the week we're in. You've got time for some focus time. You can catch up on some messages, build in your breaks, also learning to sharpen your skills. So this is the employee experience Microsoft is cultivating, right? Trying to help people. It looks at your calendar. It kind of analyzes that, does some artificial intelligence or AI, gives you some suggestions on what they think would, what you can do with your calendar. And then on Friday, they were like, okay, you've got this meeting coming up, and then here's some emails that might be related to that, right? So this was a ticket that had come in and some tasks around this. And I'm like, that's right. I've got this board meeting that's coming up. I've got these emails. I'm good. I remember that email. Let me flip over to Teams and take a look at my tasks for this customer. Okay, so I'm basically going to flip over to my Teams area and let's take a look at the customer. And in these tabs up here, there's my tasks. So here are the tasks that I'm tracking for this customer. I've got them roughed in. This is our live site. So so I've kind of built these tasks out into these buckets. This is called, for those who are really techie, that it's called a Kanban board, but it's just really a task board with columns. And basically you can take a look at what tasks you have for the day. So I can add tasks to these buckets and track my tasks. One other thing I would mention to you is Microsoft has a mobile app. I don't know if many of you have seen it or explored it a bit. I would encourage you to do so. It's called Microsoft To Do. It allows you to track your own personal to-do tasks, but it also integrates with these tasks as well that are part of your teams. So one place on your mobile device that you can track your own personal tasks as well as any team tasks that you have to take care of. So now that I've kind of thought about, okay, I've got my meeting coming up here on the board site. I've looked at my tasks. I can add some more tasks here. My to-do task is basically just to click the plus sign, enter your tasks, and boom, you can create your task for the day. Now I've kind of settled on my tasks for the day and got rolling. The coffee's starting to kick in a little bit. I'm starting to think through. Let's take a look at what the company has going on. Let's plug into the company, right? And what Microsoft has done is they've started to build Microsoft Viva, a different suite of a different product within Viva to allow you to create your intranet site, which is your SharePoint site, and build that into Teams. That's just called Connections, Viva Connections. So Viva Connections can create a link right here or an icon right here on your Teams dashboard. And as an employee, I can click on that. I haven't left Teams. My teams are still here, my tasks for the day, but now I'm plugging into what's going on with the organization. Okay, so this is the demo intranet site that we put together. We've worked on different web parts. These kind of squares here can be interchanged with different products or different web parts. This one here shows us kind of what's happened at the last employee event. There's some things going on. I can check out the human resources department page. Oh yeah, it's open enrollment time. Let me take a peek at our healthcare benefits. Okay, kind of getting acclimated to what's going on. Oh yeah, there's this summer event coming up that we need to volunteer for. There's 30 days left, and let me sign up for that if I need to. So again, as an employee, I'm plugging into the company, what's going on. There might be news and announcements. There might be a CEO announcement that I need to take a look at, and just connect with, again, the broader organization and what's going on. As I scroll down a little bit farther, we've built in some of the dashboards, just simple charts that you can take a look at. These can be connected in with your KPIs for your organization. We've built out a very simple way to do this without a full-blown kind of data warehouse and Power BI reporting implementation. This is a very simple way to do that Gurjesh can walk you through. And it's kind of real time. You can update it in real time as well. Or if you wanted to go to the next step, we've also built in to show you that you can go to more of a complex kind of Power BI reporting and surface this all right within your intranet site for the day. So again, as an employee coming to work, I'm reminded about my tasks. Okay, I get those in line, and then let's take a look at our intranet site, and I've done that all without leaving Teams. It's kind of this is kind of the one-stop shop. Your Teams interface is really, as I see it, Microsoft's single pane of glass where all of the action is happening. So so if I needed to click in and do some work in the actual SharePoint site, I can, yeah, go ahead.
Let me just interject here for a second, because I want to emphasize how cool this is, and I want to emphasize how I get out and talk to business leaders all the time. And one of the things that business leaders are telling me is you know what, with this remote thing is great in a lot of ways, but I feel like my culture's taking a little bit of a hit. And if we look at it, you can start to figure out why, right? What used to happen, right, before COVID, is people would come into an office like this, you'd hit the coffee pot, right? You'd drop your stuff down at your desk, you'd wait for your coffee to fire up, you'd grab a cup of coffee. In between times, I'd see Colin, I'd say, man, did you stay up and watch the Twins game last night? I thought they were going to lose it again in the ninth inning, but God, it was great, right? How's your kid doing, you know, in the Little League baseball game going great this weekend? We just do the chit chat, right? And there was all that camaraderie and that kind of that cool feeling part of our company culture. Then I would gradually go down, sit down at my desk, open up my email and kind of start into my day, right? Well, in remote work, when we started all doing remote work, we missed that middle chunk. What would happen was we'd go grab our coffee, okay? And then we'd sit down at our computer, open up and just start pounding away at the email. And day after day after day after day, we would gradually just sort of lose contact and connection with all those people that I've been working with for the last 10 years, right? And that's where people started to feel like this isn't quite right. I feel kind of isolated. This isn't the way this thing works. Using a modern office like this and using Teams and some of the things that are available to us, we can interject and get back, even in a very remote environment, we can interject and get back to that feeling like we were doing before. This morning, I woke up, went downstairs, grabbed a cup of coffee, went up to my desk, and noticed one of my coworkers here had a shingle shot yesterday. And so I noticed that his do not disturb was on, or his open was on. He was available in Teams, right? And I just chatted him real quick, started a video chat, and I just said, hey, Bob, how was your shingle shot? And he tells me that he kind of got flu-like symptom and was up till about 3 o'clock last night. And I said, God, it's too bad, you know, whatever, hope you feel better. But that's just kind of like me jumping in and having a conversation by the water cooler. If that becomes kind of the way that we're going to use tools like this in this new modern workspace, we can actually continue to have the same kind of connectivity that we did before. Okay? A lot of little things like this, right? Do you right now in your organization have a central place that everybody, just by habit, everybody at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning, whenever they log in, they go to a central place that has announcements for the day. Hey, remember, we got this employee cruise, or hey, we went and did this volunteer effort for Feed My Starving Children. You know, I want to thank so much all these people that gave their time and click here for pictures, right? And here's a cool place for us to sort of connect, right? The other thing that's cool is here's an announcement from our CEO. Very critical, super important announcement that everybody needs eyes on. I mean, how do we disseminate information like that right now? We send an email out. Email sort of gets trapped amongst all your other emails for the day. 2/3 of the people see the announcement. 1/3 of the people have no clue that the announcement ever happened. If we trained our employees and our teams to start to use this modern workplace like it's designed, we're going to capture that. We're going to have some of these water cooler kinds of chats in the morning. Okay. We can see it if you scroll up to the top of the page, if you would, Frank. So again, here's a volunteer thing. We can start putting some emphasis on volunteer hours and participation and all kinds of different things. The really cool thing about this, and this is that I just get jacked up. I get so excited when I talk about Office 365 because it levels the playing field for small businesses. The chamber, the Better Business Bureau, everybody in this room, we're all part of this small business fabric that supports our country. This levels the playing field, and we need to change the way that we're thinking about this to make this really work. This is our sling in the story of David and Goliath. Office 365 is our sling when you look at other enterprise organizations. Okay? Take Target, for instance. For years, for 20 years, for 40 years, Target has understood the value of big data. And they've taken big data, all this data that they collect from all of their stores, and they have a team, a big team, all kinds of resources to analyze what's going on at their stores. And they find out that when this widget down here, this blue widget down here, is selling twice as many of the orange widget, what do you think they do? They stop producing so many of these orange widgets, and they put a whole bunch of these, they start manufacturing tons more blue widgets, and they move all the blue widgets out to the end cap to sell even more of these things. Target has been doing that forever. They use all of this big data that they have, okay, to their advantage, and they've been just crushing small businesses because of it. Small business grocery store in Torrington, Wyoming, right, doesn't have any clue why all the orange widgets are there anymore. Eventually, they either take them out to the garage sale or they just dump them. This data is accessible to every small business in the country right now. It's there. It's in our accounting packages. It's in our CRM packages. It's on your website. Would it be beneficial for a company to understand that every time somebody goes to their website, people on the homepage are spending 35, 45, 55 minutes on, 45 seconds on the website. They're actually reading some things and doing some things on that website. But when they go to the second page, it talks about their services. People are going to that page on their website, and 2 seconds they're leaving. Would that be beneficial for an organization to know? Absolutely. And that information is available today. So what we're showing here is it's easy on this SharePoint site from within this to take some of the tools that are built in to SharePoint and put together some graphs. You could do sales graphs. You could do memberships. You could do amount of money raised. You could do whatever you wanted to do that would be important so that, again, I, as your worker, I'm logging in the morning, I'm grabbing my cup of coffee, I'm having a chat with Chad to see what's going on, and I hit this homepage to see that we had this boat cruise, and I can check and see, how are we doing this month as a company regarding sales, right? And if I'm the marketing guy, I can call my sales guy and say, oh man, it looks like we crushed it last week. What are you guys doing out there, right? But it breeds all this stuff. And this is no longer just available to enterprise organizations. All of this stuff is built into SharePoint. What we need to do as small business owners is we need to stop and slow down and start asking some questions. What if I knew this? What if I knew that? That's the kind of stuff we need to do. Okay, so scroll down just a little bit, if you could. Well, this is even more. So this is Power BI, which again is built into the Office 365 platform. You have to pay a little bit more for it every month. I think it's 35 bucks a month or 25 bucks a month in addition to whatever other licenses you have. Okay. But with Power BI, and I'll have Jess kind of dial into this and show you guys how easy this is to use. You probably have to have somebody on your team that is going to dive into Power BI a little bit. But you can start capturing some unbelievably specific metrics. And again, once we get this whole thing dialed in, we can have this stuff just auto-populating every single night. We go out to an Excel spreadsheet, we grab it, we dump it back in, and all of this is brand new data tomorrow morning. So the whole company now has insight into this information that's out there and has been available to us. The information has been out there forever. It's really only been available to enterprise networks up until the last 3-4 years. That makes sense? So Jess, why don't you go ahead and talk to us a little bit about sort of the difference in those two graphs and sort of how easy these are to work with.
And my question.
Yeah.
Sure, Jess.
And Mark, Gurjesh had to jump off, so I'll be taking it home.
Go ahead, Frank. You can take it.
Did I hear there was a question?
No, I was asking if there were questions in the room. Anyone have any questions about what's been covered so far?
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, a couple of things as the team has built out this site. Again, this is a very simple graph. We can use an Excel spreadsheet for the data, or we can use a SharePoint list for the data. So if I were, if I needed to interact with this rather than just this window to Microsoft Teams, if I needed to interact with this, we can go to the SharePoint site, right? And we can launch in and just really take a look at the full features. Again, I could click in here and see the announcements. As Mark had talked about, that's available on Teams as well as here in SharePoint. But in terms of our data, the underlying data for this would be in a SharePoint list, and so I can take you to that list, and we'll take a look at site contents. And so there's documents in the SharePoint site. And one of the documents that supports the chart is this spreadsheet right here, right? So we've built a simple spreadsheet. You know, these are the numbers right here. If I went to 55, if I went to 10, just so you know that, you know, it's connected, 20, 30, and 40. Now this, oops, I apologize. I was watching the keyboard. There's 30 and here's 40. And we'll save that. This is a linked spreadsheet. And we have some automation built in the back end that will take these numbers and then update the chart as needed. One of the things that we had discussed early on was, you know, if you have if you're using QuickBooks for your accounting package, you can take your results from your reports, put them into a spreadsheet, and then link them out, and then share that with some nice graphs and charts to the rest of the organization. So again, a quick, simple way, if whether it's a simple spreadsheet, an export from your accounting package, or even more complex, all of that can be shown right within SharePoint. And as Mark said, you know, this is the power that's brought to us as small businesses, that used to be just, you know, reserved for large businesses. So looks like it's still refreshing. Power Automate is what we're using in the background. And it takes a little bit of time for some of those to kick off. So that's a little bit about you know, the charts and graphs and how those can be updated. Power BI, we could drill in. I'm not sure how much time you want to you know, to go into Power BI, but this is the Microsoft's full data analytics platform, right? So reports, analytics, data cubes, data warehouse, all of that's available. You can go from SharePoint and even open within the Power BI desktop, which is kind of another service, right, that it's built on. We're seeing a window to it, but you can open in Power BI desktop and get the full featured. I mean, if you have analysts that need to drill into the data, create any kinds of charts and graphs that you want to analyze your data, that can be done. You know, these kind of are linked together in this example where this is just Africa and Asia, these regions. If you want to go to a different sales area like USA, you can click that. The map changes. This chart changes. All of it is related to your selection here. And so there's some interesting and really cool possibilities that you can do in Power BI. It's just a matter of where, you know, how detailed do you want to be? Do you want to? We can start slow and build, or you can kind of get as complex as you need to, all the way into these full blown Power BI workspaces. So.
Yeah, that's cool. So let me interject just a couple things here, Frank. So somebody, I don't remember who it was, but somebody was talking about ERP system. I think it was Mike talking about ERP systems before. And as you can see with this SharePoint site, it's super easy because all of these apps live in the same Office 365 environment. Even though this is sitting here and is sort of the window in the front piece for Power BI, if I needed to go in and do some heavy duty work, I just click into that, and that opens up the instance, actually the full-blown Power BI application itself. So this is sort of the window that shows through on the SharePoint site. The entire back end of this thing lives in the cloud, and I can access it from the SharePoint window. Okay. The other thing that I can't emphasize enough, and again, this is another big mode that small businesses need to get out of. They need to change the way that they think, is that all small businesses should be using automation. This platform, we've looked at 5 or 6 or 7, we've just blown across 5 or 6 or 7 illustrations in how this simple SharePoint site right here is using automation. So scroll down just a little bit, would you, Frank? So this announcement right here, little up. So this announcement right here from the CEO, okay? If you expected your CEO to log into the SharePoint site, like Frank did, go up here to edit, hit settings, go into the thing, change the deal, go over here, modify some things, change the margins, change the back, it's not gonna happen, right? This CEO site, you can put together the coolest PDF document, the greatest instructions you would ever have. There is no chance your CEO is gonna update this thing daily, weekly, monthly. They might do it once or twice and they're on. They're gonna say, no loss, not gonna happen, okay? This can happen if you think about, is this something that's automatable? The answer is a strong yes. What you could easily do, would it be possible for your CEO to compose an email every Monday morning and give it kind of a status of the company? Hey, this is what we're doing this week. This is some things we want to make sure we're focusing on and paying attention to. Hit send. It sends to an email address. The email address automatically takes the body of that email, parses it out, puts it in here and posts that message. Could your CEO post a message like that every Monday morning? 100% they could, right? That's automation, right? When we think of automation, we think of robots going around and carrying canisters of things over. That's not it at all. We need to start as small business owners. We need to look for areas and opportunities for automation because they exist all over our business. Anywhere where you have repetitive processes, that's an automation possibility. Any place where you have a spreadsheet where people have, oh, I've got a spreadsheet that tracks all that stuff. That's an automation possibility. All of these things are automation. And we just, as small business owners, we need to start thinking like enterprise people think about and say, where are these automation opportunities that exist? Because to turn these things on and to make these things happen is super easy. Scroll up to the top of the page a little bit, would you, Frank? Well, every small business has a human resources function, right? We're all hiring people. Unfortunately, right now, we're all in the process of hiring people and letting people go, right? And that HR process is exactly the same every single time you do it. There's an interview. You take information during the interview. You create the applicant's their onboarding file, right? You take notes from the onboarding and you put them in that file. Once that person is hired, they have a W-2 form to sign, and they have some additional information that we get. And when those two things are gathered and put into that file, the HR person now has to put this stuff together and get it out to the manager. Now the manager goes through and takes that information and starts the interview and starts the onboarding process, right? And right now in almost every small business in the country, we repeat this thing over and over and over, and it's all somebody doing it. That's all completely automatable, right? We can just have this W-2 form that we send to the person signs it electronically. As soon as they hit send, that hits in their file. As soon as the second piece of information hits the file, the manager is alerted that these documents are now in the employee file and are ready to go, and the manager goes and does their thing. Manager goes through and starts the onboarding process, hits go, and now the onboarding process takes the person through the onboarding process. We had a customer who was they're a cold storage business up in northern Minnesota, small business. Started talking to them about their process and their automation stuff, got the same exact answer. Nope, you know what, Mark, good, we're a small business, don't really need all this automation stuff, right? Started asking more questions about their business. Well, the way their business was set up, they had to physically print pick orders, and the pick orders were then taken out to the warehouse to be processed. And there were guys running around out there with forklifts, moving things up and putting them on 18-wheelers. And this whole process, it was amazing to watch the amount of goods they had, okay? These things had to be printed every single day. Northern Minnesota. What happens on a snow day? 15 inches of snow. This person's supposed to drive to the office at 6 o'clock in the morning to print these pick tickets. Can't get out of the driveway. Can't happen. What happens to everybody else in the cold storage facility? Done. Nothing. Sitting around like this. Nothing to do. That whole process was completely automatable. Those pick tickets come in, they automatically go out to the store. The guys go out and they've got a computer out in the warehouse. They know exactly how to log in. They barcode these things, they pick these things, and it just rocks and rolls every day. And we completely eliminated any need for all those manual processes. And again, the initial feedback from that small business was, we're too small, we don't need automation. That makes sense? Everybody, as people that are out there running small businesses and leading small businesses, we need to change the narrative. We need to start to say there's business, there's data out there, important data, and there's insights that you own right now within the data that you own. There are these insights, and right now you can extract those. And it's not going to cost you $150,000 to do it. Okay? And from our perspective, if before you take on a project like that, you should determine what the ROI is on that, so that you know, if I'm going to spend $10,000 to have a company like Perceptive help me figure out how I can gain insights from this data that I have, what is the ROI on that $10,000 going to be? If the ROI is going to be in 4 years, I might not spend the money. If I'm going to make that money back in 2 months, would you be interested in doing that as a small business owner? I mean, of course. I'd take every single one of those opportunities, right? But we have to start asking those questions, and we have to get out of this small business mentality. This platform allows us the ability to now start thinking like enterprises do. But we have to flip the switch and start thinking that way. Yeah.
What's your definition of small business? How many employees?
You know, I think that depends on, you know, you talk to Microsoft and it's 5,000, right? Our definition is probably 5 to 500. That's probably the swath we look at.
It's nice.
Yep. Yeah.
I think of what you're saying, and even just on an individual level. So for instance, say I lost half my team, now it's me and I have tons of hats I need to wear and I need to get all the work done that we used to do with 3 people, like these automations and like efficiencies you can create right here to help you time in and maybe not a person level.
Yeah, 100% agree. And Frank touched on it a little bit there in the beginning, but I don't know if you guys are, how many people in here are using Planner or Tasks or To Do? If you're not using it, you got to go back to your office and you got to look at it. If you're using Office 365, so I'm part of maybe 10 teams, 10 different channels. So I might be part of 6 of these channels, whatever, here at Imagine IT. Each of these channels has its own specific sort of task board where I'll be in a meeting and we'll be collaborating on information here within this channel. And we'll put together and say, Mark, you need to do this, and Colin needs to do this, and Mary needs to do this. So I'm in multiple channels here, all part of a separate project plan within this whole project plan that we can talk about when we're together with this team. I then, from my app, I can pull up my Planner app, and it's linked to every one of the teams that I'm on, will show me all the tasks that I have due for each of those teams. I don't have to remember I'm on this team and I need to remember to go do this stuff. Oh, and I forgot there was something. Oh yeah, I'm on this team over here and I gotta make sure I make those phone calls. Okay, I don't have to click around and remember which teams I'm on to try to remember which tasks were assigned to me. I literally can pull up all my tasks from my car in a parking lot at Dunkin' Donuts, and I can start crushing through these tasks while pounding on a Bavarian cream. That doesn't happen, just using that as a for instance. So really good questions. Anybody else have any other questions at all, or any other things you've seen?
You said like this is part of Microsoft 365 or
Yep.
add-ons? What's the cost of adding on?
This is all part of your SharePoint, comes as part of your Microsoft 365 package. Okay. It would probably be, I would recommend that you work with a company like us or Atomic Data or Perceptive and I would spend a little bit of money to have a site like this built for you, because every business is just a little bit different. You may not need to know that the dudes were out on the yacht, last Monday, right? That might not be a big deal for you. So there will be other things that probably apply to this. The whole idea with this is that if you do this landing page well, you're going to naturally attract people to use it. If this is something where people go to it once or twice and like, interesting, not so much, then you sort of lose the power of it. So figure out what's really going to resonate with your team. If you have a cornhole tournament, that's summer-long cornhole tournament, and everybody is super fired up to see who's in the lead, put that at the top of the page and everybody will log into this thing every day. Yep.
So you mentioned landing page. Does the landing page connect to your website?
There are external pages that you can have within SharePoint. This is really an intranet, so this is really your internal facing page. So the other cool thing that you can do is, because this is part of the Office 365 platform, it is all generated by your login. So if you do a little bit further development, if I log in as a sales guy, I might be presented here when I log in with sales information here. If you're on the marketing team, when you log in, because of your permissions, you might be presented with marketing material here that would be more applicable to you. So we can actually customize the things on this page for each individual, either department or user. Takes a little bit of extra coding to do it, but you could do that if you wanted to do it.
I guess my question really was, is there an external facing?
You can, it's not really built for that. There are external facing pages. Certainly within Teams, you can share any of your Teams things with external resources. So if I had a legal team or a construction team or something that I wanted to have access to this, we could certainly do that through Teams. This is really more internal facing at the current moment. Initially, when this was released, I think Microsoft had this idea that they were going to be a Wix and you were going to be able to go in here and make your own website, build your own website in 5 minutes. And I think they kind of quickly shut that down. That's a whole nother animal that they really need to focus inside and drive business value, I think is what they're trying to do. Okay, great questions. Anybody else have any other questions? Another thing I just want to, yeah, go ahead.
So, for instance, say you're launching something like this, and I think about where I've worked in years or adjusting into things. What is your suggestion for starting a new technology and getting everybody on board? Like, how is that the way that people actually want to jump on your ship?
Yep, great question. Actually, really great question. I think the first thing you need to do is you need to start early with your buy-in way before you do it. What we see a lot of times is there will be a committee that will be working on this project. They will be doing all of this work on the backside and gathering all the necessary things, and they'll sort of do the launch at the same time as they say, we really need this. And everybody feels like we're sort of it's kind of being rammed down our throat. And the natural reaction for human beings when anything is being rammed down our throat is to say, nope, not going to happen. So early on, you would start saying, we're feeling sort of we're missing our culture. We used to have 2 years ago, we used to have a great vibe, and I'm just not feeling that anymore. So we need to start implementing some things that are going to get our vibe back. This is one of those things, right? I think it's really important. I don't know who I was talking to before we started here, but having a champion is wildly important. So if you had 1 or 2 people that were going to be a champion for you, so it's not me, the CEO, again, ramming this thing down. Everybody's going to do this, right? If it were Colin, just one of the dudes who works back in the back, and Colin was on this committee, and Colin was just fired up for this thing because it's going to be so cool, and we're going to be able to see this, and we're going to be able to see all this stuff. If Colin's fired up about it, the rest of the team is going to get pretty fired up about it too. Okay.
Couple minutes to recap what we've learned today.
Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions? Again, I think the biggest thing to come out of this isn't really the purpose of this. I wanted to show everybody a really cool SharePoint site because this is what it is. It's not just a list with nested folders. And that's what most people think about when they think of SharePoint. This is the possibility of what that could potentially be, the site that we saw. Okay, I think that's first. Secondly, I think I just think that we all as business leaders, and especially the folks in here from the chamber and the Better Business Bureau, we're talking to these small business owners every day. We need to encourage them to start thinking like the big players do. The same exact questions that are being had today over in Hopkins at the Cargill National Headquarters, International Headquarters, those same questions should be asked by the dude down the block that has a small law firm. The same. The playing field is literally right now, same. We just need to get to a point where we're thinking about that and thinking like that in order to be able to utilize it.